On May 24th, 1988, was Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals, where the Edmonton Oilers were taking on the Boston Bruins in Boston, when something very unusual happened. All the lights in the arena went dark and led to the game that was almost finished being called. What was behind this and what happened after, we'll dive into today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history every day. And today's trivia question to listen out for is, who was the mobster who is thought to have a conspiracy to the blackout of the 1988 Stanley Cup Finals? So, how did we get to the 1988 Stanley Cup Finals? Well, on one side, we had the Edmonton Oilers, who had been around since 1972 and was currently going on a tear for the Stanley Cup, winning 3 of the last 4 Stanley Cups. And a big reason for this was they had someone who was making a name for themselves, who would later be known as the Great One, Wayne Gretzky, who in 1978 made his debut in the NHL with the Edmonton Oilers when they transitioned from the World Hockey Association to the NHL and took the team to new heights. And this season, he led Edmonton in assists and points, but they had 2 people finish ahead of him on the team, in Craig Simpson and Jari Kurri, leading the team with 43 goals. And they finished second in the Smythe division behind the Calgary Flames with 44 wins, totaling 99 points. And if you don't know the point system in the NHL, you get 2 points for a win, 1 for a tie, and 1 for an overtime loss. And they use these points for the playoff seeding. And they were the favorite all year long, and they came up against the Boston Bruins that year, who were second in the Adams division, also winning 44 games with 94 points, led by Ray Baroque in points and assists, and Cam Neely in goals, and hadn't won a Stanley Cup since Bobby Orr was on the team in 1972. So the both teams made it easily to the playoffs, and the Oilers cruised to the finals, losing just 2 games in the process, beating the Winnipeg Jets in 5 games and sweeping the Calgary Flames to make it to their conference finals, beating the Detroit Red Wings. But the Bruins had a little bit more of a challenge. They weren't as dominant of a team. And so it took them 6 games to beat the Buffalo Sabres and 5 to beat the Montreal Canadiens. And they needed 7 games to get past the New Jersey Devils to win the Prince of Wales trophy for their conference and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, the finals began on May 18th in Edmonton, and it started off with Wayne Gretzky with the first goal within 10 minutes. And that started the Edmonton Oilers on their rise, finishing the game 2-1 with the first win of the series. The second game was on May 20th, and they again took it to the Boston Bruins, winning 4-2. In Game 3, they were showing their dominance, scoring a total of 6 goals to Boston Bruins only 3. Then Game 4 came, the second game in Boston, and Glenn Anderson of the Edmonton Oilers set a record for the quickest goal in a finals game, scoring his first goal in 10 seconds. But the Bruins weren't giving up. They were on the ropes. They knew if they lost this game, they would lose the series. So they took the lead. And this is a very unique game. If you ever watch highlights, this is in the summertime in Boston. There was a fog that came up from the ice, where the humidity and the ice were mixing together, creating a fog around the puck, making it hard to follow if you were watching. It made it a unique experience. But with the Bruins leading 3-2, the Oilers quickly scored another point to tie it up. And shortly after they tied it at 3-3, the lights went dead at 16 minutes and 37 seconds into the second period. So they had a whole nother period left to play, and they couldn't get the lights to turn back on. Now, it's said that possibly 2 things may have happened because of this. One, being probably unlikely, that Whitey Bulger, the gangster of Boston, had orchestrated a way for the lights to cut out to make sure the Boston Bruins had a chance to win the series. Now, this is very unlikely. If Whitey was a fan of the team, he'd rather have the team play because of the rules of the finals. If he knew them, it made it more advantageous for him to cut off the lights of the game. What more likely happened is rats got into the wiring system of the building and had chewed through the wires, and they couldn't get it fixed in time for the game that night. So they suspended the game, all these stats counted in the record books, but the game was suspended and would be made up later in the series if needed. So what they do is they just move on to the next game. If they need to add that final game, they would, which would be unusual if they went to 7 games. As Boston was the lower seed, they would have the final game in Boston. But that's not how it actually turned out, because they took Game 5 in Edmonton, and Edmonton continued their dominance, winning 6-3, sweeping Boston Bruins, winning their 4th Stanley Cup in 5 years. But this would be kind of a sad moment for Edmonton, as the great one, Wayne Gretzky, played his last game for Edmonton, as the next year he would go to the Kings after being named MVP and scoring the series-winning goal. That was the last memory of him playing in an Edmonton uniform. But this wouldn't be the last championship for Edmonton. 2 years later, they would win another Stanley Cup in 1990, but that would be the last one they have ever won. As for the Boston Bruins, this would begin another long drought for them to win another Stanley Cup. Previously, it was 1972 when they won their last Stanley Cup with Bobby Orr and Phil Espinito. It wasn't until 2010 when they finally won another Stanley Cup. Now, this series will always be remembered as the Lights Out series. And it's important because you always need to be prepared for what might happen. And I think it really changed the way of the series. Now, I think Edmonton would have won no matter what, as they were dominating Boston throughout the series. But it took the sails out of Boston, who were tied at the moment and had a chance to win at their home venue. But as the next game was in Edmonton, they had put all their baskets into defending that last game, and now it all kind of came down. So really, even though you can give your all, they needed to find a way to come back and get it, and they just lost it. And though Edmonton may have just been too strong for them to compete against. But always remember to give your all, because you never know when you'll get the chance again, as Boston Bruins waited a long time for their next Stanley Cup. And don't wait a long time to share Daily Sports History with a friend. Wherever you're listening, there's a share button with that little triangle and the little dots. Send that to a friend and say, hey, check this out, and we can become sports historians together. Come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History. And did you catch the answer to today's trivia question? Who is the mobster who has a conspiracy theory around the Game 4 blackout? And the answer is Whitey Bulger.